Hello, everyone. Today I am joined by my dear friend Brendon, who's an absolute legend. I am just going to invite him quickly. Let's get Brendon that invite. Brendon is probably the guy who's done the most international science fairs out of anyone I
Okay,
know. Oh, he is
it's
with
sideways
us.
here. There we
The
go.
legend is himself.
Hold up,
I was
hold
just
up.
giving a nice intro of
Yes,
you.
hold up real
So
quick.
yeah, no, this guy has done probably the most international fairs out of everyone. He's pulled up in
Yeah,
Dublin to
sorry.
Taiwan to Abu
Uh,
Dhabi to Phoenix. Man's has been all over the place.
this is not
He's got
there. Okay,
plat.
yeah.
You got
Go for it.
platinum awarded Canada wide, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's about him. And he's also tearing it up at Stanford. So yeah, without any further ado, Brendon, please enlighten the viewers who don't know you. Just tell them a
Yes.
little bit about yourself, about uh, the works of Mr. Brendon.
All right, all right. I mean, as always, great to talk to you. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor. Um, I'm the second most accomplished person in this call. Uh, so yeah, what am I? I'm a first year at Stanford right now. I'm studying CS. I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. And Science fair was really important to me when I was in high school. That was like my sort of main extracurricular, I guess. And well, that's how I met this guy. I've done a bunch of different things. Um, Anything particular you're going for? Like,
No, I mean like that's a good intro to the people who don't know you. Um, he's Brendan's humble, but he's won top awards at all these fairs. He's won platinum award at Canada wide, second place at ISEF, um, Taiwan International Fair, same thing. So you've been all over the place. But in your last, you want to describe your last project that you participated in, detecting dark matter. Let us in on kind of how you like what that project is, how you started it, and kind of really how it came about.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So that yeah, that was a really fun project. So what it is I'll give everyone a bit of background because I know um, dark matter kind of, I guess, sounds scarier than it is. The idea is that the galaxy is spinning too fast. Astronomers have made observations that the galaxy is turning very fast, and there's just not enough matter to hold it all in, right? Because you need gravity to hold everything in, but it's going too fast. It should be flying apart, but it's not. So that's kind of a mystery, is like what's holding everything in. And one major hypothesis for this is the idea of dark matter, that there's like some kind of matter that interacts with through gravity and has a gravitational pull, but does not otherwise interact, or at least rarely otherwise interacts. So one model of this is called a WIMP, weakly interacting massive particle. The idea being that this would occasionally interact with regular matter through the weak force. And so physicists, in order to either confirm this or rule it out, have made quite a number of experiments, which are really, really sensitive. And I'll dig into that after. But the idea is these experiments are, in fact, so sensitive to any kind of particle that A, they have to be buried deep underground. And B, even when they're buried deep underground, they detect all kinds of other things other than dark matter. And the idea is that it's not a trivial problem to figure out, okay, I saw an event, is it dark matter or is it something else? Is it just some noise? Like, they're so sensitive that if you touch the glass with your fingerprint will be radioactive enough to make the whole thing
Wow.
stop working. So that's a tricky problem to figure out what's dark matter and what's not. And that's what I was working on, is using some machine learning methods trained on some calibration data to see if we can get this to work better, this classification problem. So I
Yeah.
hope that yeah, I don't know how clear that was, but
No, no, that was pretty clear. I mean, like your project was probably the most complicated out of everyone on Team Canada, but you did an excellent job, and I guess like displaying what you're working on. And I know you've worked on many things, whether it be self-driving cars or dark matter. Is there right now, now that science fairs are done and you're done
Mhm.
competing, is there a problem that you're passionate about that um, you're trying to work on? And if so, like, how do you think that problem could be solved?
Yeah, sure. So that's a good question. I'm in a bit of a transition period right now because I just sort of finished up a paper that I was working on for a long time on reinforcement learning and exploration. Um, but actually, I'll mention to you one problem that's really fascinating to me and really open-ended that I spent some time working on last year. Um, I didn't actually end up like releasing anything, but it's a really cool problem. So since the beginning of computers, like ever since computers have existed and people have used them, the assumption has been that they can't understand human language, right? Everything, you can type up a document and you can save it in a file, and the computer will record what you've written, but it doesn't understand it. And that's kind of always been the assumption, but that's not true anymore. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of GPT-3, which is like this language model that can generate whole news articles, and they sound really reasonable. I guess they break down at a certain point. But so now computers can understand human language, and that opens up so many things. So let me just give you a concrete example. Taking notes. People take notes and they have to, if they want to keep it organized, either it's a dump or they tag things and they put in all kinds of work to tag everything and organize it. And so much work organizing things. That's not how people think. People are fuzzy. They don't put things into boxes. So there's no reason now that you can't have a computer organize your notes for you, and in fact, link them together and put in hyperlinks and kind of organize everything in a web for you. There's so many things you can do. Notes are just one example, but um, control F on a web page, and this is something that I think OpenAI worked on. You can fuzzy search now. You can like look for this topic instead of look for this specific word. And there's just this huge Pandora's box that is open now, but it has not been explored nearly enough. We're still kind of in this, what am I looking for? What word?
It's like this gray zone that's like we haven't, I guess, infiltrated that the full
uh,
depths of it,
we're,
like its full
we're,
potential.
we're still in like the 1984 Macintosh stage of this kind of
Yeah.
interface. Um, yeah, that's a really cool problem. And I spent a good amount of time last year working on some kind of map interfaces, visual map interfaces for organizing information. But yeah, that's a cool problem.
Yeah, no, that was like I remember you telling me this on our trip to Taipei, where
Hmm.
kind of now that you were done science fair, you're working on with the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
cheeses in Silicon Valley and
yeah.
all that got you into. And so, I mean, it's cool how you transitioned out of science fairs. I know a lot of the people watching or a lot of the people involved with YSI, they're all students and who are trying to do science fair are already in science fair. What was the most important lesson or kind of the most important thing you learned out of your experiences after the many years of participating in science fairs?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I know
I guess,
I'm such a
yeah,
good question maker.
you're a great question asker. Okay, I mean, beyond specific, technical things. One thing I've learned is that sometimes ideas are overrated, which sounds like a strange thing to say, but when I worked on my self-driving car, for instance, like, self-driving cars have been done before. It wasn't like a totally groundbreaking idea or whatever, right? Um, but I decided to work on that because it was something that A, I thought was really cool, and B, just to kind of get anything to work at all in that space, I knew I was inevitably going to learn a lot from that, and I did learn a lot from that. Even though self-driving cars have been done before, but I guess you don't have to have like I think having a like a not super new crazy idea, but putting a lot of time into it and just doing a ton of iterations and, you know, staying on the grind for a whole year, and just, test over and over and iterate. You learn a lot more from that than by, spending too long thinking about ideas, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think that's a common theme amongst like all our friends where it's like being passionate about something and getting your hands dirty in that topic
Uh-huh,
for
uh-huh.
like a year at a time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I think like no, I totally echo those sentiments in terms of like really focusing on one idea and kind of going the whole way with it. But I
Hmm.
guess for us, now that it's over, I know we ponder greatly about the experiences that science fairs also bring along. I know
Hmm.
we've had some
Oh yeah,
times.
yeah. We've had some fun.
We've been to how many places together? Phoenix. We went to ISEF 2019 together,
Yeah, and then
Taiwan
Abu
International
Dhabi.
Science Fair, and Abu Dhabi.
And then,
Um,
well, I mean, we were both in Montreal in 2016 as well, but
yeah,
I
but
think
I
May
was
there.
that was the year you did your self-driving car,
No, no,
right?
that was a lot earlier than that.
That was a lot.
I was like,
How old were you when you're driving car thing?
no, that was 2018.
That was 2018.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that was the year before ISA. Yeah, no, that's true. We both did Canada-wide in Montreal. But I guess out of all those fairs, what was probably the most funny thing experience that happened? I know we've
hmm,
a
hmm.
lot of things have happened, Brendan.
Yeah. So I'm gonna need some help because I'm walking on thin ice here, right? I have a lot of stories about Shaan that, out of self-interest, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut about. Um, but okay.
This is not North Korea, but you're censored partially.
I'm just being careful. Okay, okay. I mean, there was Denver, which is low-hanging fruit. Um,
What happened in Denver was interesting. I mean, that whole experience of going to Taiwan right before
mhm.
COVID was a whole case. And for those who don't know, I think the worst part about Denver was we had to get our connecting flight to San Francisco, and had a taxi at 5 a.m. and I handed my poster holder to the taxi driver girl and she's dropped it and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on shrooms." And I think that's
Still have no
when
idea if that was a joke or not.
I still don't know if that was a
We,
joke or
we, we,
not,
we
but
we also had an Uber driver who was playing a game on his phone while he was driving, swerving way the hell around the highway. So
that
that was,
was he was
um,
not an Uber
yeah,
driver. Was he
no,
an Uber driver? Oh,
no,
I
no,
thought you were
no,
talking about in San Francisco with our chaperone
no, no, no,
almost
no, no, no. That was a different. Yeah,
crashing.
no. Anyway, Denver. I mean, you got all the stereotypes, but it did not disappoint. So that was fun. Then in
We almost got
so
arrested, I think, or not really. Well,
when in
uh,
Phoenix.
a person who should
Yeah,
remain nameless
yeah, they thought it was a good
almost
idea
got Team Canada to
to
be arrested.
so at our hotel in Phoenix there was this balcony, that over it was like 4 stories above the road, right? And we were hanging out there after awards, and someone thought it was a good idea to throw some coins off of there, scare the hell out of a couple of
It was
people
it
walking by
was the
on the
person
road.
who threw it was a penny, right? Because Canada,
Yeah.
we don't have pennies.
Anyway, yeah. So then there was this cop on the road who turned around and walked inside. He probably saw that. I had nothing to do with this, but
Diksha is saying no. Diksha is saying no. Shout out to Team Canada member
what?
Diksha. She commented no in caps. No.
Oh, I don't see the comments
Oh,
for
well,
some
I'm
reason.
letting you know. But yeah, no.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much coins were tossed, and then cops were called,
Yeah,
and we had to sprint and hide because yeah, that was almost sketch. That was very sketch.
that's pretty good.
Um, we also consumed chicken testicles. Well,
I did not.
I did. I tried to convince Brendan in
Okay.
Taiwan and in the
Yeah.
night markets of Taipei, but that didn't work out. Um,
What happened?
but that was definitely those were definitely funny experiences. I guess moving on from that before we
You
get
know,
anyone in trouble. Or do you have do you have
yeah,
one
no,
more?
just no, 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 not a story, but it it's kind of nice to, work really hard on something for a year and then just get to do a bunch of stupid things for a week, right? Like it
Honestly, I don't think people
it's
realize like how much you don't do science fair at a science fair.
uh
Like I think we just do one day of judging, one day of public viewing, and see if you we call it a day.
yeah.
I remember the first time I got close with you, or like it was like ISF, right? But I
Yeah,
was just
yeah, yeah.
we went hiking in like some desert, and
Oh yeah.
you went sprinting on top of this tall mountain thing. I'm like, who the heck is this kid? Like, what? So far, I thought he was gonna fall. Anyways, yeah. But I guess through with all of that, what has to be your proudest moment? Because you've done a lot. I think a lot of science fair kids look up to you,
Hmm.
rightfully so. But what was
Yeah,
the proudest
definitely.
moment, whether it be an accomplishment or just actually finishing or completing a specific project of yours? What was your proudest
Well,
moment?
yeah, good question. One kind of one really cool moment, which I don't know if I was the proudest of it at the time, but in hindsight at least. Um, oh, yeah, when I was working on my self-driving car, so I started on that project really early. The idea was like to convert a go-kart into a self-driving thing, and so I started that really early because the idea was, okay, I have to get this working before the snow starts coming down, right? Because I'm from Sudbury and it's pretty cold, and you have snow on the ground for 6 months of the year. Um, so yeah, I had to work on that really early. So I spent most of the summer working on it in simulation and stuff, and kind of getting my bearings. I didn't know very much going into that project. I was definitely
Winging it?
yeah, jumping into the deep end. And so once I had actually like done all the hardware stuff of getting the go-kart properly rigged up, there were a couple of months where I tested some stuff. I tried doing this thing called an end-to-end model, and I didn't have much luck with it on the road. And the car kept going into the ditch, and at a certain point, like I think it was in September, I figured I had to rework this whole thing from scratch using a completely different architecture. I'm not going to dig into it too much, but anyway, yeah. So I spent probably a month reworking the whole thing almost from scratch. And I remember there was one day, probably in November, when I took the go kart out onto the road and then started driving. And I was expecting it to crash into the curb, and instead it actually turned away from the curb and then turned away from the road line. And I was like, whoa, it was really cool to have that work for the first time. That was awesome. I was really happy.
That's amazing. No, I think like that's like probably the favorite points of all like most of our
Mm-hmm.
friends, where it's like after months of works and failures and like just one, even if it's a little success and it finally happening,
Uh-huh.
that just is just like a weight off the chest, and like you can go to the fair finally like with something to show for it.
Yeah, especially considering I'd spent months before that, having no luck, and it just worked. So that was cool. Um, mhm.
That's awesome. We have a question in the chat from Ronnie Zacks, Mr. Ronnie Zacks. He asked, out of all your fairs, because you've been to all the fairs, uh, even UCs. We didn't forget to mention UCs or UCs, however
Uses.
you call it. Um, what was your favorite one and why? It's hard because there was like it's different styled competitions, whether
Yeah,
they be non-competitive or competitive. But
and oh, and by the way, I can't see the chat at all, so please, when people ask questions,
yeah, no worries.
let me know. It's not updating for me. Anyway, it would be, I mean, I say you kind of have to. They're in a bit of different categories. Like as an experience, I mean Taiwan probably because it was.
It was
I think it's
something.
kind of questionable whether you would call it a science fair or not, but it was an experience. I would say like as a competition, I mean ISEF was amazing. I met so many brilliant people, and it was really stressful, and it was especially considering that I came down with a really horrendous flu.
That was very
So
true.
I was not doing too hot for a lot of it, but it was yeah, no, ISEF was great. Taiwan was a different category, but yeah, ISEF and Taiwan, I would say.
I have the same thing. I think our ISEF is ISEF. It's the Olympics. Like, come on,
Yeah, yeah.
you can't ditch ISEF. But I think out of all the fairs, Taiwan was most definitely after ISEF my favorite one. Not just because I touched the it was the left butt cheek of the vice president of Taiwan. That was very nice.
Yeah.
Um, but it's my last fair, and it was quite the experience. I think we didn't know if we were going to end up in our hotel at some points. Like the first night, we didn't even get picked up until later. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm,
We
yeah.
were stuck at there.
I was
But yeah,
pretty
no,
tired, but we were just chilling in the
I was
hotel.
I was just happy we were able to convince a bunch of people that we were on Team Canada curling team with our track uniform science fair.
I don't remember that.
Oh,
In
well, I
curling?
remember that. Oh, Ohm was convincing kids that we were on Team Canada because we had our full track suit. He
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
pretending we're on a curling team. Okay,
Okay.
that's a good answer to your favorite fairs. I guess now with COVID and all, and now that you're at Stanford, you're a big cheese
Hmm.
at Stanford, how has your work or interests shifted because of COVID?
Good question. I miss doing things in the real world. I miss working on robots and stuff and self-driving cars and that kind of thing. I really um I want to get back into making things that move around in the real world instead of just, you know, numbers on a computer screen. That's one thing. I'm looking forward. I'm actually doing an internship this summer, and it's going to be remote. What else is new? But on in the self-driving car space, actually, I won't say too much, but so yeah, I'm doing that, and I am,
What's your
you know,
internship for people who don't know? I know you were telling me.
yeah, it's so I will be working on self-driving simulations, and possibly other robotic simulations. So the idea being, okay, with self-driving cars, one thing is that especially in urban environments, you have a limit to how much you can actually test on the road, right? Because there's people all around, and you can't do anything dangerous. So simulations and closing the gap between simulation and reality is one really important thing there. So I'm excited for that.
That kind of touches upon my next question of what are your plans? Like, what do you want to do in the future? I know it's like a gray zone right now.
Yeah.
We always discuss like graduate school or startup, and you're like at the heart of both academia
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and being in Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
What are your plans, or like what are the options that you see yourself fitting into in the future?
I'm trying to keep my mind open. Um, I Lots of people work on startups and stuff here. Unfortunately, because of COVID, most people aren't on campus right now, and so it's a bit more difficult to kind of break into that, like to talk to people who are doing that kind of thing. I've met some, and I've worked a little bit on some projects. I would love to either, you know, start my own company or work on a startup. But honestly, I just at this point I have a it's a bit foggy. I have a hard time seeing a year into the future. So I try not to overplan things. You know.
It's a good mindset to have. Well, I've no doubt you'll be. I mean, you're already successful, but you'll be more than successful in whatever you choose. And
Thank
so,
you.
I guess the final note that I think we should leave the
Hmm.
audience in is what's one piece of advice you have for young people who are trying to create an innovation of their own, or do something uh, like along the lines that you're working on? Like, what's that one piece of advice you'd have to offer to students in high school?
Yeah. So I sort of think that I gave the answer to this a bit earlier, which was that don't the worst thing you can do is get paralyzed trying to think of a great idea. I mean, you can't, um, the fact is, like, your first project, your first several projects, you're not going to, it's really hard to do anything that's totally new in any field, right? Because, so many scientists and engineers in so many places are doing things. And if you don't, if you haven't already been in the field for several years, you almost can't do anything that's totally new. And so my advice would be to just kind of pick something and work on it, even if it's something that's been done before. With my self-driving car, for instance, that wasn't, self-driving cars are not a new idea, but I figured, okay, if I try and do this, I will learn a lot, and maybe I'll come up with some ideas for how to do it differently. And yeah, so my advice would just be to do something and spend a lot of time on it, and you'll learn from it. And science fair is great in part because it gets you, it gives you a chance to meet people. It gives you a chance to practice sharing your ideas, which is really important. You have to, you have to write a lot of stuff, and you have to speak to the judges, and that's great. The other thing is it gives you a deadline, which is nice. It forces you to get this done by this time of year, and you have no choice, which is great, because otherwise things can just go on forever. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I have to say.
I like that. No, I think everyone starts somewhere, and I think that's something that people are blind to when they look at like people like you, or you're very accomplished and you work on crazy projects, and they're like, oh, well, like I could never be like him. Like for my first project I ever worked on, it was testing the flex of hockey sticks to see if it
Mm,
affects accuracy and speed of a puck.
mm.
What was, I'm actually curious. I don't think I ever asked you, like, what was your first project that you just worked on, whether it be science for
Yeah.
like early days of high school? What was the first thing
So
you worked on?
so the re actually yeah, so this is kind of funny. The reason I got into science fair in high school was an accident. It was I remember I was in grade 8 at the time, I think, and I had to, it was required for the school. I didn't really want to do science fair, but they made me do it. So I sort of repurposed this project I had worked on, which was an app for sorting garbage. So the whole purpose of the app was you can search up something, you don't know if this is recyclable or if it's compost or what, and you can search it up, and you can click on the categories, and it shows you where to throw things in the garbage. That was the app. And somehow, by some
Didn't you go
um,
to Canada Wide? I remember seeing this.
yeah, by
Yeah, you
some
went to
crazy stroke of luck, they ended up
Fredericton,
sending me to
Fredericton.
Canada
I
Wide.
remember that.
No, no, it was
Oh, it's
Montreal.
not Fredericton. Oh,
It was
oh, it's
Montreal.
Montreal. Okay, that's
Hmm.
why I remember it. Okay, I remember
So
this.
I didn't even want to do it. Like, and then I wasn't expecting much, but I went to Canada Wide, and it was just like the most amazing week. It was it was like someone hit me in the head with a hammer, and it just kind of made me like realize, whoa, this is really cool. Um,
That's so
it,
funny. I didn't know
it
that.
was a complete accident. I didn't even want to go, but it was just fantastic. And I mean, I decided, okay, I'm going back. So I did a better project the following year, and I actually put some more. Yeah, I worked pretty hard after that.
Who
To
knew?
get better
Sorting
and better
garbage
project.
got you to be graced
Sorting
by the
garbage.
man himself, Chris Hadfield, at the Canada Wide Science.
Oh yeah, he didn't come to my project. Feels bad.
Wow. We'll talk to him about that later on. We'll make you present your grade 8 project to him. But no, Brendan, thank you so much. Everyone
Mhm.
will probably be like 10 times smarter after listening to you speak today, whether it be about dark matter or your advice. So thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely have you back after your next crazy
Thank
innovation.
you. Thank you for the invitation.
Uh,
Very good to talk to you. And anyone wants to ask me anything, just, I don't know, ping me on something. I'm happy to
yeah,
talk.
yeah. Ping him on something. I'll have him tagged in the description below. Um, or you can just click above and give him a follow because Brendan's probably the smartest man I know. So that says anything. You should give him a follow. And he goes to Stanford. We can't forget that. So thank you again once again, Brendan. And yeah, we'll keep in touch and be following your journey.
Okay. Thanks, man.
All right,
Talk to you later.
peace, bro. Take care.